So, good early morning for me, good evening for most of you. And we're doing today's webinar on Mushin, a peak performance state. And of course, I'm going to wind up explaining all of that as we go along. So, today's flow, introduction, I'm introducing myself now. Housekeeping. Yeah, it seems like, okay, it is actually a great idea when you guys aren't actually talking and you know how to mute and unmute yourself. That's great. I thought somehow the system was just remuting people after I unmuted them. So I'm trusting that Barbara Beiser has also got herself muted rather than me having muted her. And other than that, nothing I can think of in the way of housekeeping. So I like to start any of my sessions, often sometimes with private clients as well. I like to start it while reading a piece of prose or two. So this week, just trying it different this time around, all of the stuff that I read, I'm also going to put on the screen so you get to see it. So we're going to read the prose, going to be a discussion of Mushin, going to do this exercise called the Stroop effect, and another exercise that's long name, left hand, right hand, both hands, and then open discussion. The 30 spokes of a wheel unite in the center. It's this empty center space for the axle upon which the use of the wheel depends. Clay is fashioned into vessels. It's the emptiness of the vessel that makes it useful. A door and windows are cut out from the walls to form a room. It's the emptiness that the walls, floor, and ceilings encompass that allows for the space to live in. Thus, what we gain is something, yet it's from the virtue of nothing that this something derives. So that's the first piece. You might have quickly read through these, but I read them in a certain fashion, hopefully to make the meaning more apparent. Here's the second one. To learn, one accumulates day by day. To study Tao, one reduces day by day. Through reduction and further reduction, one reaches non-action and everything is acted upon. And so just let me say today that whenever somebody wants to chime in, ask a question, make a statement, talk in any way, of course, some of you will have to unmute yourself, but please feel free to just ask a question. So, Mushin, this is slide 1. Again, I'm going to read through it because I think it will give it a little, hopefully, a little clearer meaning. So we can consider the term Mushin to be similar to the terms of flow state or peak performance state as used by people in the West. And what it doesn't say right here, of course, is people talk about how to get in a flow state, and often people have no idea how to do it. It sounds like a good idea, but how in the world did I do it? So it's your breath that fills the house of your body with the greatest space, the greatest potential. When you breathe, the body expands to some extent, to some significant extent. Also, when your posture is full and open, your body expands. And when it expands, there's greater potential. There's greater space. It's your breath that opens the doors and windows of your house and helps to create an empty space. So it creates the space and it empties it. It's your breath passing through the doors and windows, your nose, your mouth mainly, that unite you and your house with the outside world. Breath is essential for entering into a Mushin state. And take again a moment to digress, is when I'm coaching people, and I'm sure for those of you who do coach, when you really notice when they're somewhat upset or when they have a challenge that they don't feel comfortable about accomplishing or confident about accomplishing, what you'll find is almost invariably they restrict their breathing. When they restrict their breathing, they make themselves smaller and they make their potential, shall we say, smaller. So in Seishindo, we describe Mushin as the state in which your thoughts, your feelings, and actions occur simultaneously and spontaneously. Very special when your thoughts, your feelings, and actions occur simultaneously and spontaneously. What you say, what you do, and who you are at such moments are all the same. And part of what's going to be in there in those moments is a clear sense of purpose. Nothing comes between you and another person. Nothing comes between your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Nothing is lacking and nothing is left over. When part of you moves, all of you moves. When you are calm, your whole self is calm. So could say that as when your rational self is calm, your whole self is calm. And you might consider what it means to have a calm body. When you are calm, your whole self is calm. Nothing, thinking, doing, and being all become one. So thoughts, feelings, and actions occur simultaneously and spontaneously. Thinking, doing, and simply being all become one and the same. Mushin 2. Mushin is not a state you'll be able to maintain throughout the course of your everyday life. Mushin is an ephemeral state that's to be experienced and released. An experience that is lost and found again many times over the course of even a single day. So sometimes people lament, oh, I was feeling in sync there for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Now I'm back to feeling not good again. Each time you are in Mushin, each time you are fully in sync, it creates a reference experience and it leaves a bit of what shall I say? It leaves a bit of there's a remnant that stays with you and makes it somewhat easier to reinitiate that state in the future. So when you enter into Mushin for even brief periods of time, here we go, you're left with a residue experience, just what I was meaning to say. By this, I mean, even when you enter back into your everyday mind, the body memory, the muscle memory, and emotional traces of your Mushin experience linger. You come back into the everyday world with a different sense of reality, a different perspective, a different outlook on life. Having experienced the wonderful fullness this emptiness affords you, you realize there's more to life than worry, action, and accumulation.
Hey, Charlie, can I just ask a quick question? This is Tony here. So what's the difference between a Mushin state and a hypnotic state? So for example, you know, if you do hypnosis with some people, they kind of go into some kind of trance. Is it different, same, overlap, what have you?
Well, good question. The first thing I would say, Tony, is that it's good to ask what exactly, and I will ask you this now, and of course not looking to test you or anything, just seeing what you come up with. What exactly, like I'm saying, Mushin is when your thoughts, feelings, and actions all occur together. How would you define a hypnotic state?
Um, and it's an internal state where your thoughts, actions, emotions are internalized a bit more. Maybe Mushin's more external. Just taking a stab.
Okay, so good. So interesting as to what's internal and what's external. So now that I have the Zoom set up different than we did last time around. So I'm looking at Sylvia's, was looking down there for a moment. Alan Klein seems to be fairly attentive, whatever. I'm looking at all of these people. And when I'm looking at them, they're part of my consciousness. They're in some way, they're a part of me during this moment. So in the hypnotic state, and I have kind of definition ahead of time, in a hypnotic state, I take it to be more of a dreaming state, to where you don't have to close your eyes when you dream, but when I close my eyes and dream, like the other day, I was dreaming that I put my hand on this hot wood stove, and in real life, my hand came whoosh, and I almost hit myself in the face with it. So when I'm in a hypnotic state, whatever it is I'm thinking and visualizing seems real to me.
Okay. So,
and yet, okay, and I just add this last piece, and yet, and yet that doesn't necessarily ready me for the outside world.
Okay.
So, yeah. Charlie, what about a more active trance? Is that Mushin? So if you're doing eyes open, for example, when you're bike riding, is that Mushin or trance?
Well, first of all, what's this? There's a phrase that I've heard many times. I don't remember exactly now, but reality is a very seemingly persistent fantasy. So I believe that we're all always in one trance, as it were, or another. Right now, I'm in a teaching trance. And I'm like to think I'm fully cognizant and paying attention, and I'm pretty calm. And yet I'm a little amped compared to if I was just sitting here by myself. And then after this webinar is over, I'll go into a different trance. So bicycle riding, one of the reasons I ride my bicycle so regularly, particularly there's so much beautiful countryside out here, just that, 100 times, 1,000 times, it creates a synchronization for me between the very active doing and eventually very passive thinking. When I first start out riding every day, I'm more like, oh, I got to go to the dry cleaners today, and at some point, this rhythm that I'm creating with all of the activity that I'm doing, my thoughts just go shoo. And I'm much more just, oh, wow, look at that beautiful rock face. And isn't this rubber tree plantation fascinating? And look at the lake. And there's actually a couple of jumping fish.
So can I
go ahead.
This is my last question. So, so can you say Mushin is a type of trance state, or vice versa, or the other way around? Is Mushin a trance state or not a trance state? Mushin is a more of an active trance state, or do they overlap? I'm just trying to clarify that, and I'll be quiet for the rest of the time.
No need to be quiet for the rest of the time. What I'm saying is, I think I haven't gone to my dictionary, and I'm not going to do it now because I'm afraid I'll lose the setup I have. I think, Tony, that trance is, in my experience, I could be quite wrong, a very unclear term that almost everyone would consider to be something different. And that I say, whatever you're noticing now, you're sitting in your house in Arizona. You notice the temperature in your room. You're looking at me on the screen. That is what we can call a kind of trance, because otherwise, I think if we say, "Oh, look, that guy over there went into trance," we get confused with hypnosis, stage hypnosis, whatever. And certainly, if you used to be able to see Michael Jordan playing basketball, I would call that a Mushin state, which is simply another form of trance. So I don't think there's any clear marker between, oh, he was in trance there for 2 or 3 minutes, now he's not in trance anymore. I think he was in one trance for 2 or 3 minutes, now he's in a different one. So Mushin equals embodied presence. Let me show you, you don't get a full look at me, but let me show you unembodied presence. Yeah, I'm here. What's the problem? This is unembodied presence. We're not using the body in a way that really enlivens us. And it's one of the main beliefs of Seishindo is it's the way you use your body and your breath that determines the way you think and feel. We're not the only people that feel that, but it's one of the key. If I sit here, imagine if I was to sit here and give you guys a lesson on how to be confident and dynamic. I think most likely many of you would start chuckling almost from the first moment. Why? Because with my body, I'm not at all showing or modeling being dynamic. I'm seeming a lack of energy. So mindful of Mushin equals embodied presence. Embodied presence equals fully present in the moment. And fully present in the moment equals Michael Jordan during an NBA final, Rafael Nadal at the French Open, or my daughter watching her Saturday morning kids program. Fully in the moment. So I think that Mushin is a state we would all like to be in rather often, but the question becomes, how in the world do we get into this state? Okay, anybody else? Before we go on to doing an exercise or two, would anybody, again, make a statement, ask a question, disagree with me, whatever it might be is fine. Anyone?
What's the advantage of being in a Mushin state? I'm still not quite clear.
You'll be more solution oriented, and you'll be very certainly more economical and graceful in the use of self. So, where I live, Tony's actually been here. I live in a small compound with a swimming pool and very nice landscaping. And there's a number of cats in our neighborhood because the lady down the block is a cat aficionado, and she has about 15 of them. So something I always enjoy seeing, we have these walls in the neighborhood, not just in my own space here, and they're all about, 4.5 feet tall. And it intrigues the hell out of me to see a cat, let's say it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's warm out, and the cat starts doing these stretching movements, and you wonder if it's going to lay down and go to sleep in a moment, and all of a sudden, whoosh, and it's standing on top of the wall. So cats and all animals, when they're really into it, but particularly cats, because they're not as domesticated in my mind as dogs, for instance, they know how to really get ready to do full action. And they're also not worried about, they don't have a confidence problem as to whether they're going to actually be able to leap up onto that wall or not. So they're thinking, however it is that cats think, I'm sure they do, all of it happens at one time.
Right. So you say solution-oriented state. So can this be used, for example, in an office environment where I'm managing people?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to have this fun possibility of doing an exercise. And some of you might be aware of this, particularly if you're on the ODNet list. The Stroop effect was mentioned by our friend Carl. I'm Carl, yes. And so I'll read what's actually written here. This experiment is based on the so-called Stroop effect, named after the experimental psychologist James Ridley Stroop, who introduced it into scientific literature in 1935. And I better put my unusual glasses on for reading. It points out the confusion, or what we call cognitive dissonance. You're thinking two different things that don't seem to match up, that all of us face when our senses tell us one thing while our intellect tells us something else. So part of what I mean by that is my intellect says, for instance, I want to be dynamic and a leader. My sensory experience is something very different than that. So if I'm sitting here like this, talking about wanting to be a dynamic leader, I'll be creating cognitive dissonance because my body will be saying one thing, my body and my emotion, because I believe that emotions emanate from the body. My body and my emotions will be saying one thing while my intellect is saying something else. And that creates cognitive dissonance or a bit of confusion. In peak performance state, we strive to be as so fully aware of our sensory experience that we have no need to think. Thinking and doing invariably take place with a different timing and rhythm. So thinking thus tends to get in the way of doing. So certainly any great athlete, and I love to talk about Michael Jordan because this is true, but I like to playfully say, do you know that Michael and I went to the same school, just not together? So Carlos, can you speak now? It's not. You want to ask a question or make a statement?
A statement. I think that Mushin is close to a big experience in mindfulness or oneness. That could be another way to explain what Mushi is.
Say it again. It's a
mindfulness peak experience or oneness
mindfulness peak experience. Yes, absolutely. The way I've been saying it is when thinking, doing, and feeling are all in the same. And that's going to mean also that you're usually more aware of your surroundings, certainly more awareness of yourself, and more awareness of the relationships you're in, which, for instance, you can really see in sports. So when Michael was dribbling the ball around, he was hyper aware of what the defender was doing. And they were kind of dancing until that moment that Michael, for instance, would take his famous fadeaway jumper. So he would, to use maybe some words that Tony would use, I believe that Michael put the defender in a certain hypnotic trance by like going back and forth and back and forth and back and back. And all of a sudden, there's separation and Michael scores a rainbow shot. Okay.
That will split also that that spiritual integrity is when what you think, what you speak, and what you do are in unison during one column.
Yes.
So you get oneness of your spirit with your surrounding. But when
yes.
you sing something, speak something different, and act differently, you are in duality already in confusion.
Yes, yes. You know, many, many years ago, there was a top race car driver, and if I'm remembering his name correctly, his name was Graham Stewart. And somebody asked him, my God, what is it like to go through a hairbend curve at like 110 miles an hour? Most of us can't even, we would be frightened to drive straight ahead at 110 miles an hour. And Graham Stewart said, well, you know, it's very interesting. When I start to go around that curve, and of course, my eyes are looking out. I'm not just stuck in the cockpit with my eyes and with my consciousness. He said, I can notice all of the cracks and everything in the asphalt or concrete track that I'm driving on as if I was looking at a magnifying glass at my own skin. So because he was so in a peak performance state, everything appeared to slow down, which gave him more than enough time to accomplish all the downshifting and everything else he was doing. And certainly I experienced that in Aikido. When you get up to the higher levels and you're being attacked by 5 people at a time. Now, they're not 5 people that are looking to kill you, but they're 5 people that are looking to get you down on the ground and smother you until you tap out. There are moments that in this one test or competition that I took, I don't normally have such a great visual memory, but I can remember seeing the sweat nodules coming down on this guy's temples as he was running to catch up with me. So I didn't do some technique to sharpen my visual awareness. All of a sudden, it just happened. And how is it that you have enough time to notice all this other stuff? It's like, I don't know exactly what it was that Einstein said, but something like, because he was often playful, and I'll try to repeat this in a playful manner, although I'll misstate it. Sitting on a hot stove for 2 minutes makes 2 minutes way too much time, and you most likely couldn't even last. Having just 2 minutes to kiss your girlfriend isn't nearly enough time, and you'd like a lot more. So time seems to expand and contract depending on what our mind frame is and how we're using our body and whether we're in Mushin or not. Okay, so this is to me, it's something I've been using for years. Obviously, I didn't create this, but I use it in my own way. You know, James Ridley Stroop created this concept. So you'll notice there's a square that I would call black, but underneath it says gray. There's a red square that's called red. Oh, there's a green square that's also called red. There's a pink square that's called pink. I mean, there's a yellow. See, I'm already getting confused. There's a yellow square called pink. Anyway, you see, for the most part, the actual color of the square and how it's named is different. Okay? What I would like to ask, if we have at least one brave soul in the room, what I'd like to ask you to do is to have any conversation. It could just be introducing yourself. It could be also a challenge you're having somewhere, whatever. I'd ask you to start talking. And then, for instance, I'll play both roles. hi, my name is Charlie Badenoch. And then I'm going to just say the word, like for instance, turquoise. Hi, I'm Charlie Badenoch. The other Charlie says turquoise, and then I have to answer purple. I've been living in Thailand for the last 4 years. Charlie says green, and I guess that's turquoise. So I just like someone to try this. This exercise won't really have any meaning until someone tries it. So which brave soul would like to try this exercise? And by the way, you can't do this exercise incorrectly. Would there be someone willing to explore this with me?
I will.
Oh, good. Thank you, Sylvia. So again, let's just agree. When I say agree, just because some of these colors might not be clear. So the actual color boxes in my mind are black, red, green, yellow. I'm going to call this purple, white. I'm going to call this olive, turquoise, orange, pink, blue, gray. Do you agree, Sylvia?
I agree.
Okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to start talking, and I'll just all of a sudden say turquoise, for instance. And when I say turquoise, please don't, like if you're in the middle of a sentence, please don't finish the sentence before saying purple.
Okay.
Okay, and we're doing this in a fun way. Whether you find it challenging or not, I don't know, but let's keep, it's a little experiment, but a fun experiment. So go ahead, Sylvia.
Okay, I've recently retired. I'm living in Ocean View, Delaware. Orange. And I'm doing a lot of charity work.
White.
A lot of olive. And
turquoise.
Green.
Turquoise.
Oh, purple.
Okay, good.
I have 3 cats, and I agree with your assessment on cats. Cats just do it.
Red.
They don't. Red.
Red.
Green.
Again.
Red, green.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
I think I'm going back to work to teach English to immigrants.
Pink.
That's been yellow. And that seems to be one of the areas I've taught English to non-speakers before.
The other pink.
Blue. And thoroughly enjoyed it.
Purple.
Gray.
Good. Okay. Great beginning. And what I notice when I do this with people is it really, the state that they began this exercise with will often tend to be magnified. So some people get annoyed. I've actually had people setting the exercise up like I did with you guys today. I've actually had people say, why do you keep interrupting me? So how did you feel doing this exercise?
Confused. It took me a while to just confirm that you were calling out the words and wanted the alternate colors.
Yes.
Because the words started getting in the way.
My words?
With the thought process, I'm very visual. So if you're sitting there saying red, I'm looking at red. And then the intellectual side of me is sitting there saying, no, the word red.
Yes. And interestingly to me, if I was at all reading it correctly, You seem quite okay with the whole thing, and even kind of mildly chuckled a couple of times.
Yeah, it was fine.
Okay, good.
I mean, I didn't get annoyed or anything. I could see where some people would get annoyed.
Yes, yes. So
Charlie, can I ask a quick question? Were you asking, when you said red, were you asking for us to look at the color red and read the word, or find the word and then read and then say the color above it?
well, the way I think I presented it was, I was going to say the word, you're going to say the color above it.
Okay, so I look at that and I go, that requires reading all these words, right? It's not quite intuitive. I can see where she's getting a little confused, because if you said olive, I have to read I don't feel olive. I have to read all the words first, but it definitely makes me look at olive and go white. Rather than going green, I can instantly go to green in the upper right-hand corner and then go red.
Yes, okay, good.
You know what I'm saying?
Good. Yeah, so Tony, there's at least 2 ways to do this exercise, and it's going to have a lot of how you, or the person, Sylvia in this instance, reacts is going to have a tremendous amount to do with the main way that she processes information in the first place. So for me, frankly, I prefer to hear the word olive, green, whatever, and I just go whoosh, and I can find that word, maybe not as quickly as you can find the color, but pretty quickly, because I'm only scanning. So some people do better when I say the word and they have to do the color. Some people do better when I say the color and they have to find the word. So it gives you a clue into.
It doesn't matter either. It doesn't matter either way.
Yeah.
What you're saying. Okay.
Gives you a look into how you process information. So here's one of the reasons why I use this when I'm coaching people, is that when people come to me, I just keep using this example of wanting to be more confident and dynamic, just because corporate people will often be saying that. For instance, it's just an easy one for people to understand. They are already in a state of cognitive dissonance. Their posture is saying, oh, I'm a schlump. Intellectually, they're saying, I want to be successful and dynamic. So they're already in a form of cognitive dissonance. And when they discuss their challenge with you, they'll be explicating or explaining that cognitive dissonance. I'd like to be dynamic and well-respected, but I'm already 70 years old, and they're explaining to you, you're beginning to understand how and why it is that they haven't been able to feel better. So using something like the Stroop effect will wind up doubling the cognitive dissonance. They have the cognitive dissonance of feeling one way and saying they want to be something else. And then they have the added cognitive dissonance of me saying a word that doesn't match the color. And what will happen is, if they stay with it, that very much overloading will, and the cognitive dissonance will go away, at least for a few minutes, and they'll have a sense of clarity. And sometimes people say, wow, simply doing this exercise with me like this is the clearest I've felt in a long time.
So Charlie, how does cognitive dissonance relate to the Mushin effect?
When you're not in cognitive dissonance, what you're thinking, feeling, and doing are all the same, so there's no dissonance. Dissonance is if Tony wants to be able to dunk the ball in basketball, but there's a part of him that says, oh, you've never been able to do this, or you're not good enough, or whatever, his thinking mind doesn't match his desire, his feeling mind, and therefore, when it doesn't match, you'll jump even lower than you could.
Okay. So what to do with that? So if we have cognitive dissonance, what's the best way to reduce cognitive dissonance?
Sometimes by using this Stroop effect is to double it to where you can no longer maintain it, which is kind of like if my shoulders tend to be up like this, then what I suggest to people is put them up higher and totally squeeze. And after a while, you have no choice but to, and usually your shoulders will be down and more relaxed than they are in your everyday life. So in this kind of work, we say, take what could be considered the symptom, tense shoulders, lack of confidence, and do it better. Take the symptom and do it better or double, and often the symptom will lessen or go away.
So Charlie, you're gently overloading until the system resets. Could be another way of.
There's my friend Joel. Gently overloading the system until the system resets, because it can be in a certain level of dissonance and actually get comfortable with it. But when you overload the system is no longer able to maintain the dissonance after a while, and it resets. And people will often, let's say if confidence is the issue, people will wind up saying, at the very least, I'm not 100% sure whether I'm more confident than usual, but I certainly feel more accepting of myself. And I say, fantastic. That's what I call, at the very least, level 1 learning. Because if you wait to feel confident before you say, I feel confident, chances are you won't get there. There's a number of discrete steps along the way, how you use your body, how you breathe, what you're thinking, that will lead to confidence. But it's not either no confidence or confidence. And that's one of the ways we tend to see issues when we're overly challenged, when we are overly challenging ourselves. Okay, this is another exercise. This exercise was developed by a very, well, I don't like to use the word genius too much, but a genius. What do you call the kind of doctor that actually prescribes and if necessary could even grind the lenses and make lenses for someone? What do you call that? Is that an ophthalmologist?
Optometrist.
Optometrist. Okay. I thought it was maybe an ophthalmologist. Anyway, this brilliant optometrist, which is easier for me to say anyway, in Oregon, this is like 25 years ago when I met this guy, he had a number of exercises like this that he used with his clients. And he actually, 25 years ago, there are some other people that are doing it now, gave people lenses that wound up improving their eyesight over time, whereas most prescribed lenses weaken the eye over time because the eye is getting used to, the lens is doing the work for the eye, and the eye says, okay, great, I can go on vacation now, and the eye usually gets a little weaker over time. This guy created lenses that actually made the vision better over time. Who would like to please try this exercise? Let me tell you what you're going to do first, whoever does it. You're going to slowly read all these letters on the top, K, H, P, N, and such. You're going to say the letters, and then the other letters on the bottom here, you'll notice there's only 3 different letters, basically, left, right, and both. So here's the way it's going to happen. I say K, and I raise my left hand. I say H, and I raise my right hand. I say P, and I raise my right hand. I say N, and I raise both hands. Who's willing to try this exercise?
I'll give it a go.
Oh,
Judge.
there you go. There's a brave person. So here's just to set it up. think of some intention you have now, Judd. Maybe not the biggest thing on your plate, but it could be something you want to do better at, something you want to do differently, and something that you could share with the group.
Okay. You want me to share that now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm working with a group on the issue of climate justice. We're having some struggles within the group, and I wish I could somehow inspire them more, lead them more,
Okay.
put us together more on the same page. We're kind of drifting right now.
Okay, so you'd like to be a better leader.
That would help.
Okay, and let's assume that you already accomplished it. What was the statement you would make? Very simply.
The group is functioning well and we are operating as a team.
Okay, keep that in mind. Go ahead and go through this exercise once, going left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right. Then you get to the bottom and you go right to left, right to left, right to left, back up to the top. Go ahead.
So I say both the letter and then raise the appropriate hand.
Yes.
Okay. K, H, P, N, B, X, I, then an L, L, R, L, R for an L, Z both, W, L, D, L, R right, B both.
Just the letter, please. With the hand
Pardon?
action. Just the letter with the hand action, not both letters.
Okay, D, S, L, Z, L, R, R, F.
I'm back, starting with F.
Oh, you're making this hard. F, both. R, R, L, Z, L, S, D, B, R, D, L, Z, L, I, X, B, N, P, H, K.
Okay, great. So first of all, one of the things that I noticed, there was about 5 or 6 letters here on the second part after you said, oh, you're making this hard, where you got much better at it. Kind of in seeming the flow of it. Not necessarily doing it faster isn't necessarily better, but your voice sounded a little bit more relaxed and you were also clipping along in a good space. And then, as always or often happens, it's kind of like meditating and all of a sudden you say to yourself, oh, I've been mindless for a while. And then you're not mindless when you give that thought. So in regard to being the group working well and you being an effective leader, has your feeling changed at all since before we started this exercise? It might not have.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. How do you feel now compared to prior to starting the exercise?
Yeah, I sort of felt like I was starting to get into the flow.
And did you get into the flow at all?
It seemed to be getting easier.
Yes. So a starting difficult task started to become easier.
Right.
And we don't know exactly how we do that, but it's what winds up happening. And I'm suggesting that you're going to find out that the same is basically true of being the best leader for this group. Because you just displayed now an ability to do things better without needing to think about how you're going to do it.
So keep doing, less thinking.
More doing, less thinking, or more being there quietly and less thinking. And you know, for instance, in movies, some of the most powerful scenes in many different movies is not when the actors are saying these amazing lines with amazing emotion. Sometimes it's just a scene that captures our heart. Okay, so having done this today, talking about Mushin, talking about how to get into a flow state, there's another slide on dyslexia that you can read when I send it to you. I think it's a very interesting slide because actually some of the greatest geniuses in mankind, or personkind, maybe we say these days, have been dyslexic people. People that are doing, quote unquote, naturally some of the stuff that I'm asking you to do unnaturally here. Letters get flipped around, so forth and so on. And some of the greatest creative geniuses have also been dyslexic. And the man that wrote this fantastic book called The Gift of Dyslexia, he said they're not a genius even though they have this handicap of being dyslexic. Part of the reason why they're genius is because they're dyslexic and see the world in a kind of mirror backwards way that no one else sees it. And in seeing the world in a way that others don't see it, then they express that unique vision, whether it's in music or visual arts or Richard Branson is majorly dyslexic and has difficulty reading, and he has a personal assistant that follows him around, and he just tells that person, write this email or do this or do that, because he's not capable of, I mean, he could do it at great expense, but he's not really capable of doing it all that well. So he gets someone to do it for him so his mind stays in the creative world.
So Charlie, I tried this hand exercise while Judd was doing it, and you know, I just felt mild confusion. I could literally feel the pulse in my brain. I could feel myself like searching for information. I don't know that I came up with anything, but it was a really interesting, very open state to be in. So quite fascinating.
So it heightened your experience somehow.
Yes.
Yeah. I can tell you that sometimes if I'm going to give a big presentation, and I mean, usually I do quite well in presentations, so I don't have the fear of failure, but you know, the adrenaline starts going and, oh my God. And I often do this right hand, left hand, both hands thing, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times in a row. And or I do the Stroop effect, and I just go through the boxes left to right as I'm doing my talk for the program, which is, hi, I'm Charlie Badenhop Black, and I'm here today to tell you about how to be in an altered peak performance state, red. And I read through that, and the cognitive dissonance I have involving worry about whether I'm really going to do good goes away because I'm so fully using myself that I don't have the opportunity to also worry. Okay, did anybody, hopefully at least one person, did anybody learn anything here today? And we'll run over by maybe 3 or 4 minutes if that's okay. Did anybody learn anything? Judd, please.
Well, yes, I did. That's all I was going to say, but just a suggestion, Charlie. when you ask somebody to do a Stroop effect thing like this, first of all, check out whether they're colorblind. It made it kind of hard.
Okay. And which is totally fine. Would you prefer to not share what you learned today?
I've written some stuff down. I got to think about it a little bit more, but yeah, I like the. I'm having a hard time getting my head around being in the moment, being. I understand a little bit about the performance state and the flow state, and I just, for someone who lives in his head so much, as Richard Rohr once said, we all, men particularly, live in the top 3 inches of our head. It's hard for me just to get into emptying the mind and getting into that moment without having all this other stuff going on.
Okay. And do you have any sense that you maybe got a somewhat different way to go about this in the future?
I think so. I'm going to think about it more, and I'm hoping that you will do like you did last time, send us out a copy of the recording.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Anyone else learn something?
So this is Barbara. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Barbara.
Hi. So I thought it was interesting to see the way in which these exercises can help empty the mind and change the physical dynamic of what you're feeling. And I hadn't seen it done that way before. It might be like meditating with a mantra, but it is a different approach. And so I want to try it on my own and kind of see how it works and see how I might use it.
Yeah. So actually, love it that you say it's kind of like another form of meditation. And I agree with that fully, because what people are being tasked to do in Zen Buddhism, as one way of thinking about it, I'm not an expert in Zen, but I know a bit about it, is they're being asked to engage their cognitive dissonance. So they're being asked questions, the koans are questions that don't seem to have a logical answer. Like, maybe the most famous one is, what's the sound of one hand clapping? So in our own lives, I think we set up a number of koans for ourselves that we certainly find that we don't seem to be able to answer. And also when we're working with clients, basically what they often express as their challenge is what I would call their Zen koan. They're expressing the cognitive dissonance they have in regard to being a good leader, being more aware of time and activities and project management, whatever it is that they're saying as their challenge. They're usually presenting it with cognitive dissonance, because what they want is, to some extent, something that they don't necessarily feel that they're capable of.
Yeah. I also, as a tennis player, appreciate the example of Rafael Nadal. I have experienced the state of flow and the time slowing down and being able, as I identify it, to see the ball some days, when other days the ball seems to go too fast. But there are days when that ball is like so clear in my vision.
And a great example of that, in a wonderful series of books, is started out as The Inner Game of Tennis.
Yes, I've seen that.
And I don't remember the gentleman's name right now, but one of the basic
Tim Galway.
Excuse me?
I think it's Tim Galway.
Yeah, Tim Galway, yeah. One of the exercises, which was so out of the box when he created it, he had 4 or 5 different brands of tennis balls. And your first task was not to hit the ball back with a certain forehand or step first or blah, 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 rack it up or down. Your first task, you had to call out the name of which brand ball it was. So it'd be like he'd hit it and you go, pen, Poem, whatever the other name is, poem. And when you were able to call out which brand it was, you tended to hit a better forehand. Or, of course, he was serving to your backhand at another time. So that's excellent that you say that. There's these moments when we are in the flow. Wouldn't it be nice if we knew how to do that more often?
Yeah, so I appreciated the idea of, because I can't be on the tennis court and translate that all the time. So
Yes.
Having other ways to access that is really great.
And these exercises can help.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Someone asked me about some exercises for their child, 8 or 10 or something, who tends to get upset at times. So I could see that.
And this, you know, the thing with kids, if you catch them in the right way, if you engage them in the right way, they'll just find this is a game. Oh,
yeah,
great.
exactly.
Okay, thank you for today. I will send out a video. I will send out the slideshow. Likely will take a couple of days. And thanks to everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'll do another webinar, maybe in 3 weeks to a month, once again. So thank you.
Charlie, thank you. It's always wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Hi, Charlie Badnap here, and I just wanted to kind of wrap a bow around what it is we talked about today in the webinar. And one of the first things I want to mention then is my idea of what is trance. You know, there's a coach that I really like a lot and respect. His name is Jamie Smart. And he says each one of us all walk around with a very special pair of goggles on. And therefore, whether they're rose tinted goggles or whether they're 3D goggles or whatever kind of goggles we're wearing, we're never seeing the world and experiencing the world without those goggles on. So the fact that we're always involved in taking in and putting out a very personalized version of the world, and that everything we do has such a huge, our beliefs have such a huge, play such a huge role in whatever it is that we do, that each and every time we're interacting in the world, we're interacting from our own special place in the world. We're not acting on the world in a objective manner. And you can really see that when people argue about politics and other issues, that two different people have two very different experiences of the world, and one person isn't about to convince the other person about what they believe is correct. So no matter what we're doing, we're all in one trance or another. So imagine that I walk down the street one day, I'm feeling rather upbeat, and I notice a number of people in my small village smiling. And as I walk by, kind of off to the side, there's these two people are having a kind of heated argument. But I'm so in a good mood myself, and I'm noticing all these other smiling people, that I don't really notice the argument. Now, let's say, could just be a few minutes later, maybe I walk down the same street, something's happened in my life that leads me to feel a little dark or maybe depressive. And I walk down that same street and I'm not really going to so much notice the smiling faces. I somehow give my attention more to the two people that are arguing. And I wind up thinking like, why do so many people have to argue in this world? Why can't there be more agreement? So basically same scene, but me with two different pairs of goggles on. So everything we experience, I'm just choosing to call a trance because none of it is purely factual or objective. And therefore, peak performance states like Mushin are also a kind of trance. And when we're in Mushin, we perform somewhat effortlessly and we optimize our full potential. And that's also not a state, a trance state, that we're going to stay in 24/7. So trance, for me, is simply the way we're feeling about ourselves in the world at the moment. And one thing we all know is no matter what you're feeling, good or bad, that feeling is going to change. And the fact that it changes for both the good and the bad kind of gives me a little hope, because we don't have to get stuck in either one. And yes, you're feeling happy now. Something will happen later on. You'll feel not so happy. That's part of what we have to deal with in life. And I want to give you a definition of Mushin that is perhaps somewhat clearer or simpler than the definition I gave earlier today. You're in a state of Mushin when your thoughts, feelings, and actions, all occur simultaneously and spontaneously, and also mesh together really well. And when people are in a state of Mushin, they perform with grace and efficiency. They don't think about what they should be doing, they just do. And anytime you notice a top athlete, a top musician, a top performer in any art, you can be fairly certain that they're in this special state of Mushin. In regard to the two exercises we did today, the first one with the colored boxes, the Stroop effect, that exercise has many different applications. And the main thing that it's making us become aware of is the fact that when we see or experience something and feel fairly clear about it, but yet where it's made necessary that we give a different answer that doesn't match our experience, we go into a state of cognitive dissonance. So the Stroop effect makes that cognitive dissonance. If you actually do the exercise, you'll realize like, ooh, it was, I don't know, I felt funny saying green when I saw pink. I felt funny or somehow off or mistaken in saying yellow when it was actually red. So it gives you an experience of cognitive dissonance, which is kind of, it gives you an experience of something that's the opposite of Mushin. And I can't easily give people an exercise to get them into a state of Mushin, but with this exercise, I can easily give people an experience of what it feels like to be cognitively dissonant. And then you can use that experience to notice when you're in your everyday life and you're being somewhat cognitively dissonant. Maybe you're writing what's meant to be an upbeat report on life. And so you're meant to be writing this upbeat report on life to help people be more positive. And in the background, you're listening to a TV broadcast about some tragedy that's recently taken place. It's gonna take you extra work to write this upbeat report about life to help people be more positive when you're listening to such a huge tragedy. Or it can be as simple as when someone says, maybe a loved one says, "Oh, honey, what do you think of my new hairdo?" And I don't quite like it, but you don't want to say that to the person because they seem to already really be loving their new hairdo. So you say, "Oh, isn't it great?" And yet you don't feel it's great. So there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance that occurs for you at the time. And there might even be some cognitive dissonance for the person who you're talking to about their hairdo. So the Stroop effect can give you a first-hand experience of what it feels like to be in a bit of dissonance. And at the same time, when I work with people that are already experiencing cognitive dissonance, for instance, let's say I'm working with a man who feels like he needs to exude more confidence in the world, but yet he believes, well, I don't really have confidence because X, Y, and Z. If I have him interact with the Stroop effect document with me while he's talking, that document helps to double his cognitive dissonance. He comes in saying one thing but feeling another, and then he's made, in a very separate instance with the colors and the boxes, he's made to say something that doesn't match his experience. If I keep the person fairly comfortable and they're speaking slowly and they're breathing sufficiently, that double overload will usually wind up breaking them out of their cognitive dissonance state. And they'll say something that's really kind of powerful and an idea that's actually new for them. So you can use double cognitive dissonance to help people get out of a dissonant state. And that's one of the ways I often use the Stroop chart, both in workshops and in personal sessions. And then the second and last exercise we did was the right hand, left hand, both hand exercise. So a person that gets into that exercise starts to experience what it can be like when they're fully engaged. The letter B, right hand. The letter F, left hand. X, both hands. So you get into doing, which involves thinking. In order to read the letters, you have to think. It comes very quickly if you're reading English letters and you're an English native speaker. You feel like you're not thinking, but you are thinking, you are using your logical mind. And you're doing a physical activity that also requires some understanding of the difference between the letters B and L and R. And also, although you might think this is a bit unusual, the difference between your left hand and your right hand and both hands. So it gives you an opportunity to see what it's like to, shall we jokingly say, skip and chew gum at the same time. It gives you an opportunity to practice being in the world and using yourself fully. And what you'll notice happening, what I notice happening in my own life, or certainly when I'm talking to clients, when they're feeling a bit insecure or uncertain, they usually start talking a little faster, somewhat like this, and I wasn't, and what they do by talking too fast is they overwhelm themselves. There's more information that they're putting out than they can digest. And emotionally digesting what you say and what you think is crucial for a balanced, healthy emotional state in your life. So the left hand, right hand, both hand exercise gives you an idea of how you can use yourself fully in the course of your everyday life or in the course of particular instances. And over practicing that exercise, you'll come to see that what's crucial is that you perform at a speed that's comfortable for you, and that also you take in copious amounts of oxygen. B, F, C, X. And even there, I had a little moment of uncertainty, but it doesn't throw me. It doesn't put me in downtime because I'm working at a slow pace where gives me that little space in between saying the letter and raising my hands, gives me that space to kind of reset and start over again. So one of the things we like to say in Seishindo is, the slower you go, the sooner you'll reach your destination. So we've reached truly the end now of today's destination. And I'll stop here, QED, and I hope to see you again in another webinar. Thanks a lot.